Hello, and welcome to Beebe Book Buzz, the monthly program brought to you by librarians from Beebe Library here in Wakefield, where we talk about the things that we've been reading lately and to give you some ideas of things that you can read for yourself. My name is Jeff Clapes. I'm the head of the reference department at the library, and I'm joined this afternoon by Beth Radcliffe and Bridget Black, also from the reference department. So who wants to go first and talk about what they've been reading?
I'll go first. So I am here to talk about Metropolitan Stories by Christine Coulson. This is her first novel, and prior to becoming a full-time writer, she spent 25 years working at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, which is where this book is set, largely. Now, it is an insider's look at the museum, but it is not quite a realistic look at life inside the museum. It's definitely surreal and has sort of magical realism elements. I would say if you've ever been at a museum and wondered about what goes on behind the scenes, or if you've ever wondered if the art is looking back at you, this might be the book for you.
Like in Harry Potter.
Like in Harry Potter.
Oh, that's right.
But in this, the art does look back at you, and there are several chapters in this. It is a novel. It tells sort of one story, but it is interconnected short stories to tell that story. It kind of jumps around in time. It goes through time. But some of the perspectives that it's told from include the art itself.
The art itself.
So there's a statue of Adam that narrates one chapter. The first chapter of the book is narrated by a chair. And just sort of an interest, so it's just kind of
art chair,
an art, not just a chair, not a chair you sit on. And in fact, actually, that is the great sadness of this chair's life.
Like a historic chair.
Is that yes? Is that it is in one of the period rooms, and this chair is upset because no one has used it, which is
because they yell at you if you try to sit
exactly
on
you
the
cannot sit on them, and that actually makes this chair sad. That the chair is sad because it is not being used for its purposes, which is sort of an interesting perspective. But if you've ever kind of the why does someone work in a museum, this could give you an insight into that. Obviously, it is from a sort of surreal perspective, but she did work at the Met, so she has a very clear insider's perspective of it, and it has a very strong sense of the place itself. So if you've been to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, you will sort of recognize places that she talks about, and it might inspire you to go and take sort of a different path, because she doesn't really hit like the known tourism spots.
It's making me think a little bit of the kids' book.
Yes, I was thinking about that too.
The Mixed Up
From
Files
of
of
Mrs.
Mrs.
Basley,
Frank Weiler. When the kids stay,
And the kids
they
stay
camp
in
out in the museum when it's closed.
I do think if you were a kid who liked that book a lot, you might like this book as an adult.
Okay.
I liked that book a lot as a kid. I liked this book as an
loved that
adult.
book.
So it could go. One of the things that I really liked about this is also just the sort of tone and quality of writing of the book. So I'm going to read a brief passage. This is actually towards the end of the book. A longtime employee of the museum dies, and then the president of the museum convenes a staff coffee, which is all of the member staff, to talk about this employee who has passed. And then this is the president of the museum speaking of this past employee. This is the speech she gives to everyone delivered. Constantine Sursic's legacy will be his bags, a tidy, ordered tribute to his love of the Met. But as rubber band man, he was also part of something much bigger, a museum that considers its staff family. We work together and we grow together. We strive together and we celebrate together. And now we mourn together for a colleague who will be long remembered by us all. May you all hold your shopping bags a little tighter today. Thank you. Now, he was the employee who was in charge of making sure the shopping bags get everywhere in the museum. That was apparently his only job, and he had worked there for 50 years. And no one else ever really know how this works. Because in the wake of his death, the whole system breaks down.
Because nobody actually knows.
Because nobody actually knows. And then they have to do, and that's sort of the tone that you get from the people who are in charge, which is that they care, but are perhaps a bit out of touch with reality. And I think that that's just a really it was just a very amusing way to.
I wonder,
to look at
have
it.
you heard anything about a reaction from the actual museum? About
There is apparently no actual reaction. I don't think that anyone in here is like a direct allegory to real people. I don't think that. I think it's sort of a melange of people that she knew while she was there. But yes, if you like a very strange, like if you want something a little bit strange and a little bit beautiful and giving you a window into a world that you're not a part of, this is a place where you can really get it, because it's just, I just found it, and it really is quite funny. There's lots of really funny lines. There's another one, I'll read another one. There's earlier in there, we are at a fundraiser for the Met, and it's being run by the development office, which, if you are familiar with nonprofits, is where the people who raise the money work. And so this is a little chapter about the people who work there. So the development office trained its own like ninja. A Mez girl could sail across a room airborne to retrieve a dropped fork before it hit the ground. Legend has it that one of their ranks supported a broken elevator from below, a high-heeled atlas to the elevator's sky, when the Emperor of Japan was briefly trapped inside. And it's kind of like, I will say some of the chapters, that chapter is told in like a collective first person. So it's like that chapter is about the Mez girls as a group. They are not individual people. They are a group of people who are sort of interchangeable in this case. And it's a good read, I think. And it's short, it's fairly short, and it's just fun. And if you enjoy sort of a different place to visit.
You know, it reminds me of one of the Christopher Moore stories, Sacre Bleu, where his stories are all bizarre. And so there's otherworldly elements in that too. And the other one is The Improbability of Love by Hannah
Did I read that?
Rothschild. I think you
Hannah
read it.
I think I did read
Karen
that.
might have even talked
it at one point.
Because that has the point of view of the whole story is told from the point of view of the painting in that. And that was really fun.
Yeah, and I think
Both of those were really fun.
Yeah, so I think that's kind of, it's probably not as funny as the Christopher Moore, which is, it's going to not be as funny as that. It's more sort of wry than,
But I think this would be a good counterpoint to all those. There's so many art-related fiction,
That are really
Tracy
serious.
Chevalier, and things that are really much more serious and historical. This is kind of a nice counterpoint to.
Yeah, and
to that.
like the point of, since it does like the point of view of actual art, which I think if you've ever read one of those where it's like, here's how this painting came to exist, and it's like, well, I'm in the paint. Like there's some people are like,
This is
I'm
what
in
they
the
do
painting.
now when they're hanging around on the walls.
Yeah, this is what the painting is like. So I really liked it. I think it's a good sort of a light read, but still like fulfilling and with good language and all of that. So.
Dick Van Dyke's is the other way. Remember in the Mary Poppins, they go into the painting.
Oh yeah. Okay.
That's true.
Yeah.
But no one enters paintings here.
Yeah.
So what do you have for us,
Okay,
Beth?
so I have Boy Swallows Universe by Trent Dalton. And I loved this book, but it was hard. I loved the characters, I loved the writing, I loved the story. The violence and the dysfunction in the book are really hard. One of the reviewers described it as a mashup between the movie Oliver Twist and the movie The Godfather, and I think that really captures what it was like. So the main protagonist is Eli Bell, our 12-year-old narrator, who lives in Darra, which is an outlying suburb of Brisbane, Australia. He lives there with his mom, his stepdad Lyle, and his brother August. All sounds right? Good, like suburbs, all good. But Lyle is a drug dealer. His brother is mute. His babysitter, Slim, is a convicted murderer, and his dad is a depressed alcoholic. So not all is right in suburbia, and then things go wrong. The plot twists and turns in unexpected ways, culminating in a really high-tension finale, which was really fun. Dalton does a wonderful job of fleshing out all the characters, even the minor ones. They're complex, they're quirky, and they're flawed. You're charmed by Eli, admire his quirky brother, love his strong mother, and respect Lyle, who is trying to be a good man in a place where you can't get much employment other than being a drug dealer. All this brought out in Dalton's exquisite, unconventional prose, like this one. August is 1 year older than me, but August is 1 year older than everybody. August is 1 year older than the universe. Or this passage about his brother is mute, but he communicates in other ways, and one of the ways is that he writes script in the air and the sky. So I'm going to read you that. I'm going to be reading a lot of passages that just is
this
so
contemporary?
wandering. Yeah.
Yeah.
It might take place in the 1980s, but
more or less.
yeah. So he's talking about August writing in the air. Like every word was meant to arrive, parcel packed and shipped from a place beyond his own busy mind, not on paper and writing pad or typewriter, but thin air, the invisible stuff, that act of faith stuff that you might not even know existed, did it not sometimes bend into the wind and blow against your face. So August provides magical realism in the book. He often knows what's going to happen before it actually happens, so he's foreshadowing stuff. Let me see what else I wanted to say about that. Oh, I know. You know how you talked about humor. Well, in this book, there's unbelievable, but there's a lot of humor, and it's the absurd situations he describes. Like there's a meeting of his stepfather with the other drug dealers, and they're all sitting around drinking beer, watching Conan the Barbarian, and discussing Arnold Schwarzenegger and Conan the Barbarian.
Well, that's sort of someone was talking about like television and being like Breaking Bad is one of the best comedies on television, even though it's obviously about very dark things.
Right,
but
right, that's true. Yeah,
that sometimes leads to the best humor. So I can understand how.
There's a lot of Australian. Is he Australian?
He
the
is
author?
Australian.
Because a lot of the stuff I've read from Australia, and even the film too, they
These
seem to have
quirky
this sort of quirky,
juxtapositions.
like comedy drama stuff all mashed together. There's something about
I
the
agree.
Australians that
except for those
they do that
murder
well.
mysteries. The Dry.
Oh, I haven't read that actually.
Oh, it's good.
I mean, everything there wants to kill them. So
That's true. Spiders the size of dinner plates.
Harry Potter again.
Yeah.
Oh, one other, can I just give
Yep.
you one quote about the humor?
Yes.
This is what he says Lyle says about, Lyle says when he approaches a drug deal, he does it in the same way he approaches his mom, Eli's mom, when she's angry in a bad mood. Stay on your toes, stay alert, don't let them stand too close to the kitchen knives. So some people had trouble with the writing in this book, and I would say give it a chance. Those people really came back and loved the book, and I listened to it, which was wonderful. The reader Steg Weems does a great job of distinguishing all the characters, and then you get the Australian accent, which is really fun.
You mentioned the violence. How is that?
It's really violent.
It
It's really violent, and that I had a little trouble with listening to it, because in a book I can just quickly bypass it. But there's some hardcore violence in it, and there's bad language too.
And does it feel? Is it really visceral? Like the violence?
Yeah,
Like it's very.
Yeah, it is. It's a harsh world that he lives in.
Is there redemption at the end?
There is. I mean, it is Oliver, as well as the Godfather. So, yeah. The characters are really mixed characters, except for the one. There's two really bad guys. One of those is a little bit mixed, but so the bad guys are really, they're bad. Don't get near them.
Is there a satisfying ending?
Yes, I like the ending.
Without giving us the finale.
Yeah, without
No,
giving
no,
it-
I thought it
yeah.
was very satisfying and wraps it up well. Yeah, I really do think it's well done in the ending. It's a long book, and so there are all these twists and turns, but you eventually get to the good part of it.
I haven't heard of him. Is this a first novel?
This is
or-
his first novel. It's
Oh,
a debut,
wow.
and it was just one. He is a journalist,
Oh, okay.
and actually, the character wants to be a journalist. A lot of the book is autobiographical, so it does. His mother was addicted to drugs, and his babysitter Slim is based on Slim Holiday, who was an actual outlaw in Australia. So it
Wow.
yeah. So it's quite amazing in that way. He also, in terms of Australia, he pays a lot of attention to detail. So the setting is really well done. And I have another
Okay.
thing to read you that he does so wonderfully. So he's describing Dara, which is where he's from. Dara is a dream, a stench, a split garbage bin, a cracked mirror, a paradise, a bowl of Vietnamese noodle soup filled with prawns, domes of plastic crab meat, pig's ears and pig's knuckles and pig belly. Dara is a girl washed down a drain pipe, a boy with snot slipping from his nose, so ripe it glows on Easter night.
Oh, that's vivid.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's just so evocative.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
seems like it has a very strong sense of place.
It does.
In the,
Yeah, it really is wonderful in that way. So profound, brutal, filled with humanity, wonderful storytelling. I would say if you've read Jessamine Ward, Sing Unburied Sing.
I just read that.
I
like,
think
literally,
there's a
like,
lot of
last week.
similarities.
And it's funny because that's, it came out years ago.
Yeah.
And I needed something to read, and I don't know why I picked it up, but it's one of those things that I felt I should have read, and I don't know why I missed it when it came out. And it's got to be one of the best books I've read
Yeah.
in ages.
Yeah.
But it was hard.
It was hard. It's not as violent as
It's not.
this.
It wasn't. Yeah, violent. Not violent, but very, very tough to read.
Yeah. And a lot about prison, too. This has
Yeah.
stuff about prison. Did you read Winter's Bone
Yes.
by Daniel Woodrow? I thought that was similar to that, too, in that the hard scrabble.
It's reminding me too, I guess, because of Australia, of what's the book that I loved so much. It's funnier. Steve Toltz. I think it's called A Fraction of the Whole.
Isn't he the one that wrote Confederate of Dunces?
No. I think it's somebody else. This was, I book talked it at some point a while ago because it was one of my favorite books at that time, but it was a very dysfunctional family in Australia, told from the point of view of the kid, but it's mostly the relationship with his father. But it was that odd mix of,
Yeah.
I think that was a lot funnier and lighter than this, but still there was a lot of real trauma and dysfunction in it, and this is kind of reminding me of that.
Yeah, this is not a book, but the movie Animal Kingdom, that's kind of which is Australian, and it's like the movie is sort of told from the point of view of like the youngest of a set of brothers who all deal drugs, and like actually in that case the like head of it is actually their mother, but that sort of
Yeah,
feeling
yeah.
that way.
Yeah.
Australia actually has a lot of like movies about that. It's hard scrabble.
There's a lot of stuff that comes out of Australia.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
really
you know,
good.
like his stepfather in this, there isn't much employment in some places other than drugs. Well, that's true in this country
Yeah.
too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's Boy Swallows Universe by Trent Dalton.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would not have thought that's what that was about from that
I
cover
know
and the
it's a
title.
colorful color, but yeah.
So I don't actually have a copy of my book because it's still on the reserve list. There's been quite a waiting list for it, but it's called Girl, Woman, Other, by Bernardine Evaristo. And she's a big deal right now because she won the Booker Prize.
Right.
For the first time in history, they split the prize and awarded it jointly to her and also to Margaret Atwood for her sequel to The Handmaid's Tale called The Testaments. But Evaristo is actually, she's English, but she's English-Nigerian. And this is her 8th book, but she
Wow.
finally made it big with, and it was, I think it was just nominated for some other major prize that I don't remember. But it makes me think a lot of the book that you talked about, except much more realistic, because it is a novel, but it's actually a series of almost like memoirs about 12 different women, but who all have some kind of connection to each other. It's basically it's a celebration of Black women's lives, a whole different rainbow, if you will, of different types of Black women. It's very much about modern Britain today. And in that respect, the best read-alike I can think of is if you like Zadie Smith.
That's what I was gonna say.
She's absolutely a good fit if you like the style of writing and also just the way she picks up on contemporary Britain and particularly the immigrant experience and the sort of non-traditional people in British society. So each of these 12 women.
Well, in that way it would be like Americana, but for here.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly,
that's-
but just a different culture.
Yeah.
So each of the 12 women gets a different section of the book. But their lives are all intertwined, and the thing that I kind of enjoyed about it is there's not a lot of plot in this. I can't actually give away much because it's a character book. This is very much character driven, but I loved the way the plot just sort of flowed along nice and steadily, but every time you started learning about a new person, you realized slowly how they intertwined with the people that you
I
had
always
already
loved
met.
that.
And that just gradually, you build up this multifaceted picture as you go through the different people and get towards the end of the book. Obviously, it's an award winner, so it's very literary, and her writing is very lyrical, but it's very accessible. No one who avoids literary fiction should be intimidated by this. It's a very easy read. And actually, there are parts of it that are very funny because she just has really wry commentary. Almost like a modern Edith Wharton commenting on just the funny aspects of society today. And I just loved the kaleidoscope of all these different characters as they work through the book. So I'll just tell you quickly about what she thinks about it. She was asked in an interview, like, what was her kind of goal for the story. She said, "I wanted to put presence into absence. I was very frustrated that Black British women weren't visible in literature. So I whittled it down to 12 characters. I wanted them to span from a teenager to someone in their 90s and to see their trajectory from birth, though not linearly. There are many ways in which otherness can be interpreted in the novel. The women are othered in so many ways and sometimes by each other. I wanted it to be identified as a novel about women as well." So the main, if you could say there's a main character, the first one is named Amma, and the author actually says this one is sort of loosely based on her, and she's a lesbian socialist playwright who's had a crazy life, and she's now older and is putting on this, she started with a friend in insane improv underground theater and stuff, but she's become a big deal, and now she's putting on a major show at a major theater, and it's a thing. Then there's her daughter, whose name is Yaz. She's in university and is surrounded by a sort of constellation of her other university friends, and they are so college, every stereotype about college students and how they look at the world, their point of view, is, so. And then there's Dominique, who is a very beautiful woman, but she becomes enamored of this, she kind of falls in love with this African-American woman who's very charismatic, and she ends up sort of rushing off and leaving England and moving to the States to live with this woman who turns out to be basically emotionally abusive. And they move to a commune, and she isolates her from her friends, and it becomes a very stressful situation. There's a character named Shirley, who is just a sort of middle-of-the-road British housewife teacher whose goal in life is to, with education, to turn troubled kids' lives around. But she has a toxic mother who's just an amazing character in herself. And then there's a student named Carol, who you see as a student of Shirley, but then you see her years later when she's a grown-up and she's making her way in the world as She's working kind of mainstream in the banking
Yeah.
industry, and she's become a very prim and proper, like, city girl. There's a non-binary character, Megan Morgan, who spends all her time on the internet trying to figure out who she is. And there's also her, Megan Morgan's great-grandmother, Hattie, who is 93 years old and has a secret that, you know, you can tell, and that gets sort of
Yeah.
spun out over time. And then her mother, Hattie's mother, the 93-year-old, has a mother who is named Grace, who was infertile, and she married a farmer from Barbados. There's just this whole, you know, it's interesting that there's not that much time spanned in the novel, but because it goes from teenagers and children
Yeah.
all the way up to 93-year-olds, you almost feel like all of these characters are different facets of the same person. The thing I liked about it that's very different from what you described is that the characters are very flawed and very
Yeah.
real. This is not,
Yeah.
there's no magical realism in this at all. This is real women's lives. And of course, they're all different in so many ways.
Yeah.
Racially, economically, sexually, and so forth. But it's amazing how every one of them you feel a connection with them.
Yeah,
You
the
see
full
some
character.
aspect of yourself
Yeah.
in those characters. And I just thought the way she did that was superb, and the writing that she did to convey it was superb. So I would highly recommend this, whether it was an award winner or not. This is definitely, and of course it's been on a lot of best of the year
Yeah.
lists,
Yes.
but it's a fantastic book for anyone who wants something that really is all about characters.
Yeah, that seems like such a deep, rich, like it's
Yeah.
like a deep, rich character study of many people that elucidates sort of an experience,
Yeah.
but by showing
Yeah.
that experiences are not the same.
Yeah, but it gets at the idea that there's this whole range of people, but underneath there's so
Yeah.
much that brings us
Yeah.
together.
I actually think this might not be a bad read-alike. It's The Care and Feeding of Ravenously Hungry Girls by Anissa Gray. It's three sisters, and one is imprisoned, and then that sets all this stuff up about their secrets and the lies they keep. And they're very different characters, the three sisters. And there's also the next generation girls. So that's
That sounds good.
actually
Yeah.
that's
I'm not actually familiar with that.
No.
African American. It's not London, not England.
The culture is definitely a big part of this.
Yeah.
This is a British book, and you don't have to be British to appreciate
Yeah.
it, but it is a picture of a society. Yeah.
So it seems like it both is like a deep character study and a strong sense, like, and place.
Yeah, very much so, yeah.
And the ways in which they are connected so
Yeah.
closely.
So we're almost out of time, but I did want to make sure that I mentioned a couple of things that I know you guys know are coming up. It is the end of the year, so we have a display of books at the library about all of our recommendations for what we thought was the best of 2019 and lists for that. And coming up in February will be, is it the 8th? The first weekend in February, we'll be doing our semi-annual big book talks. We do one in the summer and one in the winter. And Fireside Book Chats will be on February 8th, where we talk about various themed lists. I'll be doing travel writing. I think you're doing new fiction.
New fiction. Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of us who will each be doing things, and there'll be displays and lists related to that. So we hope you will join us for those programs, and we also hope you will join us next month again on Beebe Book Buzz in January. Thank you.